This thing is a work of art. You gotta hand it to Apple. They make some sleek designs. Alright, so in this video, I've got a brand new maxed out Mac Mini with the M4 Pro chip. So we got 14 CPU cores, 20 GPU cores, and I'm gonna see how this sucker compares to my beast of a Razer laptop, which has got an NVIDIA RTX 4090 laptop GPU in there. I'm gonna put both of these computers through their paces, a couple of benchmarks, but a number of real world tests as well, because you know that's what matters, right guys? You can't just look at benchmarks to really understand how these systems are gonna work for you. So we're gonna check out the Mac Mini, see if it can handle everything that I'm gonna throw at it in terms of 3D design work, video editing, and see how it compares to my monster laptop, which is basically in beast mode all the time, meaning that it uses a lot of power and it's very loud. When I'm doing heavy duty rendering, the fans are spinning like jet engines. I don't need that power all the time. When I'm doing really more heavy duty production work, yeah, I'm gonna turn to a laptop, and I've got an external GPU that I can pump out even more rendering juice with that. But for day-to-day work, light rendering, 3D design, look development, video editing, I want to see how this Mac Mini stands up. I've already done some video editing on the M4 iPad Pro, so if you have not seen my video on that device, I'll link that below. But I already know that the M4 base chip in the iPad Pro that I have can handle most video editing, most types of clips that I throw at it. I tested 6K B-RAW, raw footage, Blackmagic RAW. I've been testing ZBrush on it as well, throwing like a couple million polygons at it. It's no problem at all. So this chip here in the Mac Mini is much more powerful than the one in the iPad Pro. It should be at least twice, maybe even more so powerful than that one. I think it should be able to handle pretty much everything I throw at it, but we'll see where it breaks, and you guys will kind of see and go along with me live as I dive into this machine and ultimately decide, is this what I'm going to use and keep for just my day-to-day work, or is it just not going to be quite enough to keep up with my daily needs? So we're going to find out. And I've been working with the Mac Mini for the past couple days now, and the initial results that I've been getting are really quite impressive. So we're going to start things out by running some benchmarks, just the Cinema 4D Cinebench and the Blender benchmark. I don't want this video to focus too much on benchmarks. I want to get into the actual usage of the programs, real-world situations, and putting the Mac Mini head-to-head with the Razer laptop and explaining to you guys what sorts of work and projects that I think it can handle versus when you're going to want to turn to a more powerful rendering solution. Okay, so I've got Cinebench open on both machines here, but before I start running these benchmarks, I want to preface things by saying that I need to make some adjustments on the Razer laptop so it is a little more in parity with the Mac Mini in terms of power consumption. So as most people know, the M series Apple Silicon is very power efficient, whereas the Intel processor and everything that's going through the Razer laptop, much larger power supply, it's not power efficient at all. This machine gets very loud. This one is very quiet, whereas the Razer laptop, I can run this in an overclocked mode, which I do for heavy duty rendering. So Within the laptop, Razer has this software called Synapse, which allows you to control overclocking and the fans, and you can actually put it in silent mode, which is like a slightly underpowered mode, but it is, I would say, better for everyday work because at least tries to make the system quieter. But you'll see that even with that enabled, the fans do still spin up, and it can get a bit noisy. All right, so without further ado, let's start going here with Cinebench. Another thing that I want to note, guys, while I'm running these benchmarks is that I'm not doing screen recording on the systems because the screen recording software does, use enough of the CPU, GPU to put a little more strain on the system and not give the kind of purest result. Guys, I don't know how well this mic will pick it up. I want you to try to hear how much louder the laptop is, even in silent mode, compared to the Mac Mini. Okay, so we're gonna see if this mic will pick up the fan sounds. All right, so that's the Razer laptop, and now the Mac Mini. The Razer laptop, you can definitely hear the fans. It's not in jet engine mode, but it is still, a little noisy. Also, in terms of the temps, the Mac Mini is warm to the touch, but, not too bad. And the Razer laptop at the top here, where the air is being dispensed, the keyboard, this is really hot. This is really quite hot. Ow. Even in silent mode, guys, it gets pretty hot. The benchmark's done here. On the Mac Mini, it scored just shy of 9,000 points, and on the Razer, it is a little bit over 20,000. So in terms of raw computing power, the Razer is looking to be about 2 times the GPU performance. So the 4090 laptop GPU in here, about 2 times the performance of the 20-core GPU in the Mac Mini. The Razer laptop was in the silent mode. If I do put it into the boost mode, which is basically an overclocking mode, I can get about 10 to 15% more power out of it. And I've been able to get the Cinebench benchmark up to around the 22,000, 23,000 mark when it's in that boost mode. Okay, now I've got the Blender benchmark downloaded. This is going to run renders on 3 different scenes, and I've got it set up to do the GPU here. Maybe a little bit of a caveat I should have mentioned earlier. When it comes to rendering in general, yes, you can use the CPU, but you're always going to get better results from the GPU. So in terms of these sort of 3D software benchmarks and tests, what I'll be showing you guys later, I'm really going to be leaning more heavily on the GPU for those tests. But you'll also see that some of the other programs we're going to look at that are outside of 3D design, like editing and motion graphics, those are going to depend quite a bit more on the CPU as well as the GPU. We've got the results from the Blender benchmark. It gives you a series of 3 numbers, the 3 different scenes. So I'm just going to tally those up and we'll get our overall score. So we've got 2,414 on the Mac Mini, and we've got 6,532 on the Razer laptop. So in terms of Blender, which has been really worked on and made so efficient and runs so well on NVIDIA GPUs, the 4090 laptop GPU, yeah, it's gonna crush the Mac Mini's 20-core GPU. I don't use Blender that often, though. I'm more of a Cinema 4D guy. So we'll take a look at some real-world projects in Cinema 4D. All right, guys, here in Cinema 4D, I've got a pretty heavy scene loaded up on the Mac Mini, and I'm just going to scrub through this here. You'll see that the responsiveness is pretty good. I mean, this is a really, really heavy scene, probably close to 1 million polygons or more. Got all these different pieces of vegetation. There's cloners, they're growing. Things are being mapped onto specific vertices. We've got plant leaves that are moving, and it's all responding pretty snappy. I mean, this is basically the same level of snappiness, maybe a little bit slower is on the Razer laptop, but considering how many polygons this scene is pushing and the textures as well, most of these are 4K textures, it's pretty impressive. All right, so now here is a final rendered image from this scene, basically at the point when everything has kind of grown and the most complex, largest amount of geometry is visible. All the textures are being displayed. And this frame was rendered in 2 minutes and 42 seconds. This same frame rendered on the Razer laptop, it'll do it in around 1 minute and 30 seconds. So not even twice as fast as the Mac Mini, which is really impressive. So what we saw in the Cinebench and Blender results, that the Razer laptop with the 4090 GPU is about 2 to 3 times faster than the Mac Mini GPU. In terms of actual real world situations, that's not, always going to be the case. That upfront time to load in the textures, the materials, the meshes, that is so much faster on the Mac Mini because of the unified memory, which kind of acts like VRAM, than it is on the Razer laptop. So the time saved up front helps to offset the actual rendering time once all of the components have been loaded in. Now that we've taken a look at Cinema 4D performance, let's hop over to Houdini. Here we are in Houdini. I've got a relatively simple scene loaded up. It's a flip sim with probably a couple million particles interacting with a relatively dense mesh, this brain object. So I'm gonna just cache this scene here. I'm gonna play it back on both systems, and I'm gonna time out how long it takes to cache everything. And the thing with Houdini is that it relies a lot more on the CPU in terms of running simulations. So this will give more of a kind of a real world comparison between the CPUs of both of these systems. The 14-core CPU in the Mac Mini and the Intel 13th gen 24-core 13950HX, I believe, in the Razer laptop. So far, the Mac Mini is off to a pretty commanding start. Now I should note that I'm running Houdini 20.5 on the Mac and version 20 on the Razer laptop. The features are very similar between the two versions, at least in terms of what I'm using. The flip simulations, didn't really change. I'm seeing different results though on the Mac versus the PC in terms of how the simulation is turning out, which is a bit odd, but can conclusively say that I'm throwing the same amount of particles at both systems here, and Mac Mini is really just crushing the laptop. This is pretty wild, guys. I'm gonna have to go back in and make sure that the settings were actually the same, because this seems just a little bit too crazy. All right, so we're just about at the end of the sim on the Mac Mini. I'm checking the stopwatch here. All right, 4 minutes and 9 seconds on the Mac Mini, and we're still going on the laptop. We're not even halfway done. The Razer laptop is close to finished with its cache. Finally, I'm getting bored here, guys, waiting. Okay, 13 minutes and 5 seconds. So over 3 times as long to cache the scene on the laptop compared to the Mac Mini. That is pretty impressive. That is pretty damn impressive. We're going to take a look at scrubbing through this heavy sequence. This is on the Mac Mini, and you can see that as I scrub, I've got adaptive resolution on, which will lower the resolution kind of while you're just scrubbing, moving the playhead. But you can see that it's really quite smooth. It only takes a second or two to load up each frame, which is a composite of many, many layers. And the quality right there, it jumped to full quality really quickly. I'm on half resolution, but let's go up to full resolution. And similarly, it's not going to be that slow. It's going to scrub really fast and then only take a second or two to load the full resolution image. So what you're seeing here, the hour and 33-minute render, that was actually on the Razer laptop, and below it, the hour and 9-minute render was on the Mac Mini. So the Mac Mini rendered this entire sequence over 20 minutes faster than the Razer laptop. That's pretty wild. All right, so I've got the same scene open here on the Razer laptop. I'm currently at half resolution. So if we scrub, you can see that the response time is slower than on the Mac Mini and probably about twice as long to render a frame. I'm using adaptive resolution here and just scrubbing through it. It's not really showing the downgraded version, so, like the lower resolution version as I scrub as often as with the Mac Mini. And also it takes a considerably longer time to even load the project. In After Effects, just scrubbing through a pretty heavy scene, composited scene, it's taking about twice as long to render each frame as it is on the Mac Mini. Now, in terms of the actual final render, that was not the case. It didn't take twice as long to render the entire scene here on the laptop than the Mac Mini. But this scrubbing and moving through, checking out different frames, that extra second or two that you have to wait, that time adds up, guys. It really does add up. So in the case of After Effects, it looks like the Mac Mini, for the most part, is the winner here. I should also note that I'm loading the scene and the thousands and thousands of frames off of an external hard drive. And maybe the reason that it is performing better on the Mac Mini is just how much faster Macs will read external drives versus Windows. When I'm using my external USB-C drives, these are not Thunderbolt drives, this is just a USB-C drive, I'm consistently getting around 2 times faster read and write speeds on the Mac versus the PC. So Macs are just so much more efficient in that regard, so much snappier and speedier. For the last test here, I'm going to run DaVinci Resolve. Runs heavily on the GPU. I'm expecting quite a bit better performance from the Razer laptop than the Mac Mini, but let's see just how much better it actually is. Okay, here in Resolve on the Mac Mini, I've got red raw 6K footage from the Red Komodo. This was shot at 24 frames per second, and I am putting it into a 4K 24 frame per second timeline. Make sure that my timeline resolution is set to full. It's playing, no problem. Go into full screen. And we're getting full 24 frames per second playback, no problem at all there. All right, now let's go into the color page and let's throw on some denoising, because this is something that always causes issues on all the systems that I've used when using Resolve, noise reduction is a tough one. So there's different types. Right now, if I just kind of use the default settings, just bump it up a bit and play back on Mac Mini, getting about 18 frames per second playback in full resolution. And if I bump this up to the better mode and play back, it drops down to 12, 13 frames per second. The best noise reduction, the most demanding, is the Ultra NR for ultra noise reduction. So I'll switch that on, click Analyze. It's just going to pick up some noise information from a spot that's selected on the screen. I do a playback there, and yeah, we are chugging along at about 1 to 2 frames per second with that ultra noise reduction. So yeah, that one is really going to bog down the system, but I know that it also bogs the system down on the Razer laptop. All right, I'm going to load the same scene up there on the Razer laptop. Just mute this. Okay, we are in full playback resolution. So obviously we're going to get full playback of the 6K 24 frames per second red raw footage in the 4K 24 frames per second timeline. That's no problem. Was not concerned there. But let's head over to the color page and we'll put up a little bit of noise reduction in the faster mode. And we're getting full playback, 24 frames per second, no problem with this noise reduction. I can even go up to better. And we're still getting real-time playback in the better mode. But let's really just destroy things here and throw in ultra noise reduction. All right, so we're getting around 7, 8 frames per second playback using the ultra noise reduction mode. So I'm going to say that Resolve performance, at least when it comes to noise reduction, is going to be anywhere from 2 to 3, maybe even at times 4 times faster on the Razer laptop than the Mac Mini. And I did a render as well to see what the maximum frame rate that these systems could push. So the Razer laptop was pushing 60 frames per second, whereas the Mac Mini was able to push 36 frames per second. It's really hard to say, just precisely how much more powerful one system is than the other. At times, the Razer laptop might be twice as fast. It might be 3 times as fast. We saw that with more CPU-intensive tasks in Houdini, After Effects, the Mac Mini is actually faster. All right, guys, so I'm going to wrap this video up here. Really impressed with the Mac Mini. I'm quite surprised by how well it's performed. And the whole time, it is barely whispering. It's been just basically silent throughout all of these tests. I have noticed that when the system does get bogged down and a program freezes, that's happened to me a couple times, the fans do kick in, but they're really not that loud, and that doesn't happen often. Whereas on the laptop, it's a really powerful machine. So for really heavy duty rendering, yeah, I'm going to keep the Razer laptop, but I don't need to do that all the time. And, I don't like loud fans consistently, which this machine, even when it's not running heavier tasks and it's in silent mode, the fans will still kick on after a while. And also, I've always felt that the experience of using macOS, particularly for design and how the programs kind of communicate with each other and the speed at which Macs will read SSDs, overall experience of using macOS, I really prefer it to Windows. It's much more stable, much more fluid. So for my everyday work, I am going to be sticking with the M4 Pro Mac Mini. And if you are in a situation where you want a powerful everyday machine that's quite quiet and very power efficient, then I can't recommend this Mac Mini, more. It is really, really blown me away. I was not expecting such good performance from it. I really thought that I was going to end up returning it and be disappointed with how it turned out, but I am very pleasantly surprised. I am pretty excited about the M4 Ultra chip that is rumored to be coming out next year. Really curious to see how that stacks up to my Razer laptop and eGPU setup. And who knows, maybe I will be able to get rid of all of this and be able to replace it all with just a single Mac Studio computer. That would be the dream, but until that time, if that is the case, I am more than happy with the Mac Mini for my everyday work and the Razer laptop for the more intensive, heavy-duty rendering work. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know if you have any questions or want any more information in the comments below. Can run some additional tests and get back to you guys with more precise info using the programs that I showed in this video. So don't hesitate to hit me up and let me know if there's anything else you would like me to test out. Really appreciate your time. Hope you enjoyed this one, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.